All right, so we left off. You'd done your first album. You
Right.
went back with Bet.
Right.
Then what happens?
Well, because I had done that album and I still was in the middle of promoting it, and when Bette came back from her vacation, I felt like I should still promote the album. So I made a deal with her and her manager that I would sing 3 songs from that album during the intermission between her first act and her second act. And that's what I did. And I was terrified the first time. You know, Bette was really big then. And we played the Blossom Music Festival in, where was it, Ohio, I think? And there was thousands of people. And I had the nerve to get up after Bette's first act, following the Statue of Liberty and, singing 3 songs that no one ever heard before. I must have been crazy. But there was Bell Records out there, hoping to promote this little album. So I, took my heart in my hands and said, "Hi, I'm the captain of the ship, and I hope you don't mind. I'm going to sing you 3 songs from my latest album." And I did 3 songs, and the last song was "Could It Be Magic," and that was a real big ending. And they didn't throw tomatoes. I thought they were going to run out for orange juice. They didn't do that. Bette's audiences were really very nice to me and all that, and that whole tour. And when we finished that one, that was the end of that album, and that was the last tour I did with Bette. And Bell Records wanted another album. I was very happy to go back to accompanying singers and my life in New York, and but they wanted another album, and so I went back into the studio and made a second album. And that one had It's a Miracle and a whole bunch of other wonderful songs. And while I was finishing it, Clive Davis had left Columbia Records and bought, or I don't know, he became president of Bell Records and changed the name from Bell Records to Arista Records, and went through all of the people that were on Bell Records and decided that he was going to get rid of all of them, except he was going to keep Melissa Manchester and the Bay City Rollers. And then there was this guy named Barry Manilow with an album on his desk. And what's a Barry Manilow? And I was opening for Dionne Warwick at one of these outdoor places in Central Park. And he came down to see what's a Barry Manilow. And by that time, I had put my commercials medley in my show because I didn't have any hit records. And I thought, they're going to be bored with just original songs that they didn't know. So desperately, I put a medley of all the commercials that I had done and some of the singers had done. Oh my God, this thing went through the roof. It was headlines in every town we played. You would think they'd never heard these things, but they were, I guess, hits to the audience, even bigger hits than if I had a hit single. And so as we went from one commercial to the next, people screaming and yelling. We ended with the McDonald's thing, and oh my God, you'd think that I was singing, the Rolling Stones or something. And so he saw that show, and the audiences were wonderful. The audience was wonderful to me. And he came backstage and he said, "Welcome to Arista Records." So I continued to make that album. And so we finished it, and I brought it up to him, and he listened to it, and he said, "You need a hit single." I said, "Well, what about It's a Miracle? And what about that one? And what about that one?" He said, "No, you need a career-making record." Okay, I'll go home and I'll write a career-making song, which is impossible. It's impossible. I mean, these people, you luck into it. I can write good songs, but a career-making song? I'm not sure about that one. I don't know anybody who could do that except for Diane Warren, who can do anything. But so I went back and I wrote a couple of more, with Hal David, Burt Bacharach's partner, and they were wonderful songs. And I got this phone call from Clive. He had found a song that was a minor hit in England called Brandy, and he wanted me to hear it because he thought that might be right for me. And I thought it because I was the songwriter. Don't give me somebody else's song. But it was Clive, and you know, I listened to it, and it was a rock and roll song called Brandy. And he saw my show, he heard my album, and he gives me this. He thinks this is the career-making song for me. And it was it was a nice rock and roll song called Brandy. Oh, Brandy, well, you came and you gave without taking, like that. So, you know, what am I going to do with this, right? So I went into the studio with Ronnie. Both of us said, I don't know, he thinks it's a hit song. So I sang, oh, Brandy, well, I swear. And then we invited him down and we played him. He said, what's that? I said, that's the thing you just gave me. He said, that's terrible. I said, I know. But during the afternoon, in order to learn this Brandy song, I had slowed it down. And because I like to do it, I changed the chords around, put a key change in it. And then I forgot about it. I just, you know, I went in to do this rock and roll song. So I showed him, I went into the piano, and I played the ballad version of Brandy with my key changes and my new chord changes. He said, do that, just do that, do that. So I sat at the piano, and he said, we can't use Brandy on the talkback. We can't use Brandy, sing Mandy, because there was a hit record called Brandy out 2 years before that. Brandy, You're a Fine Girl, right? So we changed the names Brandy, and I played the slow version of that rock and roll song, which is now called Mandy. And that was it. We put a small band behind it later on, and we added Mandy to that second album, and my life changed. I exploded into a million pieces.
I mean, talk a little more in depth about arranging, because there's a number of songs that you didn't write that are on your records, but you did do the arrangements that you recorded. So, I mean, walk us through that process. How do you know where to put the key change? Where should the instruments come in? How do you build it?
I don't know.
It's just intuition?
Well, you know, I do know a few of those songs, because Clive would do that to every album. We made a deal that I would write the whole album, and he could give me 2 songs. He loved saying that. He's brilliant, you know, he's brilliant. I don't know how he hears what he hears, because he actually heard that Brandy was going to be a hit record before I did what I did to it, because if I had sung it the way that record was, it wouldn't have been a hit. But somehow, he didn't know that I was an arranger. He didn't know I was going to slow it down. That was the hit. What I had done to it was, you know, the emotion that came out of that song. But could he have heard it like that? I'll never understand that. But I did that kind of arranging to all of the songs that he gave me. He would hand me, there was a song called Can't Smile Without You, which you know now, and it was a terrible demo. I mean, terrible. It was like kindergarten. Two young guys singing. What do you want me to do with this? But when I sat, you know, he was so brilliant, I couldn't just throw it away. And I sat with that demo for weeks until I figured out, wait a minute, it's a vaudeville song. Okay, vaudeville with a top hat, you know, and that I can do. So I made Can't Smile Without You into a vaudeville song, and that record I can get behind. And the same thing with I Write the Songs. I turned that one down. Clive, I can't sing a song called I Write the Songs. They're gonna think I'm yelling about myself. And this song, you know, it's about the spirit of music, but nobody listens to lyrics. And he said, if you do it right, I said, you know, so I struggled with that one. And when I figured out that it was an anthem to the spirit of music, that I can do. And I've made it into an anthem. Well, that I can get behind, and that as an arranger and as a performer and as a producer, I know how to do that. But I had to do that with all these outside pieces of material. I couldn't just take the song the way it was presented and do it. It just doesn't work for me. I have to find myself in all of these outside songs, and that's that's what I did with all these songs as an arranger.
So if one was vaudeville and one was an anthem, what was Mandy to you? What did you get
It was
behind?
a love song, and the record wasn't a love song. The original record, maybe he thought it was. Maybe the writer thought it was a love song, and the performer thought he was doing a love song. But that wasn't a love song to me. It was a rock and roll song, and it wasn't bad. But you know, I found something in the song that I don't think the writer even knew was there. And I think you could say that about all these songs that I did, because you know, I've met these writers and they're, you know, they faint in front of me. Their eyes go back in the back of their head when they meet me because what I've done to their songs, because they never thought that that element was in their song. Because you know, when I write the songs and Can't Smile Without You and all the other ones, they were never presented to me the way I finally wound up doing. They were presented the way the writer heard it, but they didn't hear it like I do. And that's the difference, you know, and you know, I'm just a weird guy like that.
Not weird, wonderful.
Thanks.
So you record Mandy, the album comes out,
Yeah,
then you said your life changes.
my life changes, yes.
What happens?
Well, it's interesting having a hit record. Everything that you know is upside down. Everything is different. And it wasn't fun. It was not fun. It was the best of times and the worst of times. You know, I was still struggling. Clive had a party for his Arista, because it was the first hit record on Arista. He was so proud of it. And after about 6 or 8 months, he had a convention for all of the people that had worked the record in San Diego. And of course he invited me, and I could not afford that plane ride to get to San Diego. So I bounced a check at the grocery, and I got on the plane to get to San Diego from Manhattan. And when I got there, he handed me a check for $1 million. And I used it as a bookmark for a while, because I didn't know what to do with it. So that, you want to talk about your life changing, that was the beginning of really, my life went upside down.
So you're starting to get recognized more too, like celebrity?
No, I started to get recognized after my first TV special. And that was another bump up. You know, I think I had done Midnight Special, but I think I must have done Midnight Special after Mandy.
Yeah, I think 75 through like 80, you were on Midnight Special and Don Kirshner.
Yeah, those were the pop shows.
We'll talk a little bit about, I mean, you'd been touring, kind of giving concerts, but how did that compare to staging your show on television for Don Kirshner or for Midnight Special?
Well, those shows, I didn't stage it for TV. They just put the cameras on, and we just did what we did live. That was it. When we did the TV specials, then I created, but those those one song here on Midnight Special, that was just, they put you on a set that they create, not you, and you do your hit song, and then you get out of there and let the next guy in, So, but even with the Midnight Specials and Don Kirshner, they weren't attacking me in the street, not yet. That happened after the first special. Television, it was really the thing that made everything different.
Okay, so that first special was in 1977.
Oh yeah, well, if it was that late, yeah. But then yes, then people did know me between 75 and 77, but they weren't attacking, and they weren't, it wasn't uncomfortable. I was still, I was still me, and I was still able to go to the grocery, even though, I had Mandy and maybe the next one with It's a Miracle or something. But, nothing really changed too much until that first special. The morning after that first special, and that was a big ratings. That first one was like a surprise to everybody. You know, it wasn't there. Hey, Mark, wasn't there one before? Didn't I do a
You did a soundstage, yeah.
soundstage? But that was only in Chicago. But didn't I do one from the Greek? Was that after the
That
first
was
special?
79, yeah.
Oh, that was 79.
Yeah.
Yep, that was after. Soundstage was national, by the way.
But it was syndicated. It wasn't. Yeah. Oh, Soundstage was a beauty. That was the one we did in Chicago.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that was. I guess that was my first TV special. Basically, it was my act, whatever you call my act. You know, it wasn't really an act. It was just song after song, and me talking to the people, describing the next song I'm singing, and of course that crazy commercials medley. And I had my 3 singers, and it was a sweet show. It was, you know, and I by that time, I had been doing it for a few years, and I kind of was getting my footing on the stage. I wasn't as awkward as I was back at the Bijou in Philadelphia before Mandy. I kind of knew what I had to do up there, and I didn't like it. I was resisting this superstar, people yelling from the audience and interviews and all the stuff that goes along with it. It wasn't what I had planned on doing. It wasn't. Deep down, I was hoping it would all stop. That, you know, maybe the next record wasn't going to be a hit, but the next record always was a hit. Right now, I know how rare that was, and how, you know, and how grateful I am for it. But while I was in it, I wished that I had my old life back so much of the time, you know, trying to rev up to put myself out there again and greet the audience and do that thing that so many of the singers I played for wanted that so badly. That was their dream in life, to get on the stage and sing and act. And I was doing it, and they weren't, and I shouldn't have been there. Even my mother was better than I was. She sang great. I don't know what I was doing there, but I did start to understand how to do this, how to connect with an audience, and what to say to them, and how to get a laugh, and how to arrange live songs so that they build and they are satisfying to the ear, so that they end and you got to applaud because you got to be dead not to. And I knew how to do all that, and I was enjoying that part, but the performing part was still so rough because it just wasn't in my gut. But that soundstage was the first special where I did, you know, the first song, "Good Evening, Ladies and Germs," all the way to the the very end, "Good Night," and that was the first time I'd ever done that. But you know, I didn't notice any difference with the public. You know, they weren't attacking. No, after the first TV special, that was network, and that was big. And we went to the airport the next morning, and we needed security guards. That was the first time I realized, oh my God, this is television. This is what television can do. Everything flipped over like 10 levels up. From that moment on, that was where it flipped over.
So how did that special come about? Were you approached by ABC?
Yeah, Fred Silverman. Those were the days where they were offering pop record artists summer replacement shows, and I said no, and I don't know why, and I was right. I said no. I told my manager to ask them if they would just give me one special a year. That I could do. But I just didn't feel I was capable of handling a weekly variety show. But so many of the people that were on the charts during those years, they said yes. And my instinct was that if you give it away for free, they're not going to come back. They're not going to see you live, and they're going to stop buying your records. And it happened to just about all of them that said yes to those summer variety shows. and they had to struggle to get their audiences back. So that's when television doesn't work for you. But for me, I turned it down, and then they were okay with one special a year. And that was a big deal when I had one special a year. If there was still an audience out there, well, maybe they would tune in, and they did. And I loved that first special. I'm very proud of that one. And Steve Binder was great on that. And I think we wrote a real interesting television special. A lot of great arranging going on, a lot of great orchestration going on. There was that wonderful thing about New York where I was able to go from one song to another, and I went down 43rd Street and went into an apartment and sang one song in one apartment and another song in another apartment. It was great. It was a real, exactly what I wanted. It wasn't just a guy standing in front of a band singing his song. I never did that on that special. We actually developed ideas, and I was real proud of that one.
Yeah, it's part concert footage and part these little vignettes in a studio.
Yeah.
It's an interesting mix.
Yeah.
It really worked.
Right, and not many people did that. And so I was proud of that. And that was my one, my first time, only my first Emmy. And that was a big surprise. Did you ever see my acceptance speech? It is so awful. It's so awful. Please don't air that. It's so awful. All I keep saying is I'm freaking out. It was, I mean, I didn't expect it. I just didn't expect it. And so I was freaking out, and that's all I said, and then I ran off the stage. It was just embarrassing.
And Penny Marshall was your guest on that first special.
Yeah.
Was that suggested by ABC, or how
Yeah.
did she become the guest?
No, that was suggested by ABC. Yeah, and she was great. She was great. I had a lovely little scene with her, and she was a trooper. We did a little song and dance on Bandstand Boogie, and she was great, and we stayed friends.
Well, speaking of Bandstand Boogie, you added lyrics to what was already the music for
Right.
American Bandstand?
Right. I don't remember why. On the first album, I did a jazz song. On the second album, I did a jazz song. On the third album, I think it may have come from the third album, I was looking for that kind of bebop-y song. And Ronnie one day was singing, I said, what is that? He said, I think it's a theme from American Bandstand. So I looked it up, and there had never been any lyrics written. So my collaborator Bruce Sussman and I wrote lyrics to every note of the orchestration. Not only that melody, but all the backgrounds. Bop, bop. We put words to those hits from the orchestra and recorded that. And Dick loved it so much that he stopped using the old Lester Lannon or whoever, I forget who was the band that originally played the Bandstand theme, and he used our Bandstand Boogie version for years after that. It started and ended the show.
Yeah. And you'd appeared on American Bandstand as well, right?
I did, yeah. I think Mandy was the first time I did Mandy for a network TV show. That was network? Was Dick Clark a network show?
That might have been syndicated, actually, or on ABC.
Well, everybody knew of Dick Clark, of the Dick Clark American Bandstand. Anyway, yeah, that was the first time I think I did Mandy in front of cameras, yeah.
Was there a response after that? Like you said this TV special got you a big
Yeah,
response.
there was. I mean, when I think about it, yeah, I think, there were people who kind of recognized me, but nothing like what happened after that first special. That was another world that happened.
And then you made the second special the year after, 1978.
And the same thing, I loved creating it. It wasn't just a guy in front of a band. I got George Schaefer to do that. Now, George Schaefer had never done a music special. He's a wonderful director and very well known for drama. And I called him. I thought, this guy will give me some class. He was great. He was great to work with. He was so excited to do this show. We did a lot of that second special at the Pantages. And that album that was going to come out when the special aired, I'd never sung any of those songs. That was from the Even Now album. And Even Now had Copacabana on it. and Can't Smile, I think, was on it. And Looks Like We Made It. I don't know, a lot of big ones that were coming from that album. And nobody had heard those songs. But, you know, I thought, well, maybe I'll luck into some of them being hit records. So we produced the show as if they were, even though the album had never come out. And we did a big production around Copacabana, which hadn't come out yet, as if it was a big record. And I remember the first day of recording the second special, the night before I had won the Emmy for the first special. So I came in the next night, you know, and everybody was applauding, and I was starting the second special. That was a great memory. We did, you know, various production on there, but then we did a concert at the end. And the concert was filled with these songs that nobody ever heard of, but I kept saying to the audience, pretend you've heard this, and when you hear the first note of it, oh, please pretend you love this song, but they'd never heard it before. And they were great. They were great. They played along with me on that. And when I hit the first note of Looks Like We Made It, they went crazy just as if they had always loved that song. And same thing with Can't Smile. They didn't know it, but they pretended they knew it. It was great.
Well, you mentioned the Copacabana number. You're wearing that silver shirt in it.
I got into trouble on that.
Tell us why you got into trouble with that.
Well, you know, I was doing Danny Kaye. I was just, you know, fooling around. And a lot of the critics just, you know, hated me doing that. They didn't understand I was having a great time. They thought it was serious, you know. So it's their problem. But the audiences loved it, though.
And is it true that that almost ended up in the Smithsonian, but not
quite?
It
did. We sent it to the Smithsonian because they requested it. I was honored. It was an honor. And then I gave an interview. And you can't take that shirt seriously. It's ridiculous. So, I mean, what was I supposed to say? I'm honored to send that wonderful shirt. So I said, I always knew it would wind up in an institution one day. And they got very insulted and sent it back to me. And they didn't put it in there. They got no sense of humor.
So you still have the shirt?
I do. It's when we do Vegas, we put it up in the bar. Yeah.
Now, Ray Charles was your musical guest for that special. Talk about working with him.
Yeah, well, of course, that was a thrill. And he had heard a song that came from my first album called One of These Days, which I love. And he did that one. Oh, man, that was a real thrill. And then we did something together. I forget what it was.
It's a miracle.
Yeah.
You did,
Yeah, he was great. Just great.
And your mother makes an appearance in this special, in the
Yes,
opening.
if it was up to her, she would have done the whole special. But I let her open the special.
And Kevin Carlisle was the choreographer on this one?
Yeah, I forget what year I met Kevin, but he was very, very important to me. You know, I don't dance, but I need someone to show me how to move. As I said, I'm not comfortable on that stage, and certainly I wasn't then. And he had great ideas for production stuff in my live act. And when it came to doing the TV special, I'm not sure, was he involved in some of my TV specials?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah?
Yeah.
It's been for so many people. Yeah, but he was great. He was great. You know, I leaned on him for so much.
One other thing, well, just a little more about staging. Like, so sometimes you're on a stool singing, sometimes you're at the piano singing, and then you'll get up. To this day, are you more comfortable doing one versus the other? Are there certain songs you're comfortable performing in a certain way? Or?
You know, I've done it for so many years now. This story that I'm telling you about how uncomfortable I was, I'm not anymore. It took a while for me to embrace this career that was thrown into my lap. But once I stopped resisting it, I started having fun with it. And so, you know, do I enjoy standing up or sitting down? Or I do it, whatever the song takes. You know, it tells me what it wants to do, but what I should do. You know, one of the things that made a big difference in my performing career was taking acting lessons. I worked with a woman named Nina Foch. She was a big star in the 40s, and she was an acting teacher. And you know, every night when I used to go on stage, I was terrified because the night before they were crazy and screaming and standing, and then I said, "Oh, I got to do this again. They're going to do it again." And when I took acting lessons, Nina taught me to break down the lyrics to a song the way she would break down a script. And as soon as I did that, because you know, even in my worst days, I was trying to tell the story of the lyric to the audience. Even when I was the goofball up there, I was trying to connect with these people, with these songs. And the only way I could do it is by honestly telling the story of the song. And I think that's one of the reasons that they really connected with Mandy and Could It Be Magic. They were actually inside a story with me, you know. And so when Nina got into my life, she showed me how to do it every night, because without acting classes, I was just hoping that I could do it. But with acting and the technique that she taught me about how to break down a song, where am I when I'm singing even now? Who am I singing to when I'm singing even now? And every night it's different. It could be my grandfather, it could be Gary, it could be my dog, but it's somebody that I love, and I'm in the song. And that was from Nina, that I learned how to do it so I could do it every night instead of just hoping that I can do it so that they'll get it. Now I know how to do it, and that was because I took acting lessons, and I'll always be grateful to her for doing it for me.
Wow. So you mentioned your performance at the Greek Theater. In 1979, HBO aired that on standing room only. Do you know how HBO got involved with that concert?
I
Do you
don't, but I know that we were the first big HBO concert, and they always forget to say that, you know, when, you know, and HBO, if you're listening, because I always say somebody else was the first big one, but we were the first one to blow NBC off the map that night. And was that the Greek?
Yeah.
That was the Greek theater special, and they had never had a music special on HBO, and you can look it up in Variety. It says that was the first cable show to get bigger ratings than, I think it was NBC or one of the real networks. That was that Greek special, and they always forget to say that. But I'm very proud of that, and I remember that headline in Variety saying that.
That's a big deal. I mean, this is very early cable, 1979.
Right,
yeah.
right.
So, were there special considerations for this being televised? Were there cameras on stage with you that you were aware of?
Yeah, there were. I mean, I wasn't really a part of the details of it, but I wanted cameras on stage. Yeah, I wanted them to be close, because I think, you know, if I got anything, it's intimacy. If I got anything, and they needed to stay on my face so that I could connect with the viewing audience. So yeah, I loved that there were cameras on the stage, and I think comedy is better if you're up close. But the Greek was, you know, it's a huge place, so of course they had cameras sprinkled all over the audience. But yeah, they had cameras on stage. I didn't mind it at all. It was exciting. It was thrilling. It was thrilling to do that.
A lot of your early television performances and the TV special too, you talk right into the camera, or you sing right into the camera. Were you comfortable with that from the beginning, or did that take getting used to?
You know, oddly I was. Oddly I was. Because like I say, I wanted to connect. It's all I care about. I mean, why am I doing it if I'm not connecting with people? And, you know, I'm proud of the lyrics that my collaborators have written, you know. And so when I do them, you know, I try to act them so that they're real. I try to be honest with what I'm singing, and yeah, and that's what you're getting. And you know, I love it. I love doing that, because I'm not a dancer. You know, don't back up too much, because you're not going to get anything.
So then also in 1979, your third Barry Manilow special comes out with special guest John Denver in this
Yeah.
one. Talk about working with John.
Yeah, he was a great friend. He was a great friend. What a loss that was. Shouldn't have happened. I think I arranged a Everly Brothers medley. He loved it. We had a great time doing it. That was an interesting special. That was when I discovered makeup. There was a guy there, I forget his name, that did I looked like an angel. I looked like an angel. I don't know who, do you remember who it was?
I don't, but
I never looked like that I still don't look like that. I never will look like that, but he was unbelievable. And I looked like an angel on this TV special. If you ever look at it, you know what I'm talking about. But it was an interesting, and there was this wonderful lighting guy who's done all of Gary Smith and Dwight Hemian's work. God,
We'll find the names, yeah.
You can find it. But you know, he was, God, the light, between the lighting and the makeup, God, I've never looked like that in my life. It was thrilling. I knew that, you know, it was 1 hour of my life that I will look like that, but it was great to look like that for an hour.
There's a Q&A with fans in this one too. What was that like for you?
Oh, it went much longer than what they were able to put. Yeah, but they were great. You know, these people, you know, these strangers have been given me my career, you know, wonderful to me. And I don't mind talking to them at all, and they're always very interesting. And but I think that may have been the first time I'd ever done that on camera. So it was, that thing went on for an hour or something, and you know, they had to stop us.
There's a fan club president, like a high school fan club president in the audience who just wants to kiss you, and you go and kiss her, and it's just a really sweet
Oh, I don't remember that
moment of a young fan. It's great.
Great, yeah.
And then also in '79, I believe you made your first appearance on The Tonight Show starring Johnny Carson.
That was terrifying.
Why was it terrifying?
I don't know why it got me so badly, but I couldn't sleep that night before. I don't know why, you know, he's so big. He was huge then, and he was doing 90 minutes. That was a 90-minute show. I did 3 songs on that first time I was there. And I had stopped being nervous because of the acting classes, because I knew where I was. I knew what I was doing on the stage when we were doing concerts. So I never really, I stopped, my nerves began to go away. But when I did that Tonight Show, I was terrified. The night before and in the wings, and I don't know why it got me so badly. But he was great to me. He was great every time I was on. He was great to me and let me sing as many as he could. It was great.
Is The Tonight Show a show that you had watched growing up or regularly?
Yes, by that time, sure. Yeah. Sure, you couldn't, you had to, you know, it was a big deal. Everybody was on The Tonight Show. It was the biggest. It was an honor to be on it, and I really was honored to that he, you know, and let me do 3 songs. That was wonderful.
Were you comfortable doing kind of publicity interview kind of things by that point in the late '70s, or when did you kind of get the swing of all of that?
I've always been comfortable with interviews and interviewers. Yeah, I've never had trouble with it.
So moving right along to 1980, your next special was Barry Manilow, One Voice.
One Voice, yeah.
That was with Dionne Warwick was the guest on that one.
Oh, yeah. You know, I really don't remember too much about that One Voice special.
You tap dance in that one.
Oh,
Do you recall tap dancing?
Yeah. I don't remember too much about it, but you know, I think I was promoting the One Voice album, so it's got some nice music on it. And then I had produced the Dionne album. And so she did I Know I'll Never Love This Way Again and Deja Vu. Yeah, and she had, you know, that album was her comeback album. I didn't know I was producing a comeback album, but because I thought she had already come back because I loved her. But that album, you know, brought her back, and that's why ABC allowed me to have her. Because I asked ABC if I could have her on the John Denver show, and they turned it down. But I knew that she was about to have a big hit record on that comeback record, but they hadn't heard it. So they turned her down. But then by the time we did that special, the One Voice special, she had already come back and had a couple of big hit records, and then they allowed me to have her as my guest.
So as your career as a performer is taking off and building, you're still doing producing for other artists.
Yeah,
Talk a little about balancing that.
Yeah, it's my first love. It still is. I love making my records, and I love accompanying and arranging and producing for other singers. It's just the performing that I still, have trouble with. Like I say, I'm okay with it now. I really am. I'm certainly not nervous in the wings, and I certainly don't dread it the way I used to. But my first love is still in the background. I still love working with musicians. My favorite is sound checks. If I could just go home after our sound checks, I'd be a happy guy.
Why do you like sound checks?
Because we do 2 or 3 songs, and I tell everybody, I give everybody notes, and then somebody else should go on stage and let me go home. But then I got to go on stage. And it's still my least favorite thing to do. But I'm okay with it.
And you had produced The Divine Miss M as well, right?
I had.
Beth's first album?
I had her, and the second one too.
And her second.
Yeah.
And the first one, that's the one that had the Boogie Woogie Boogaloo
Uh-huh.
arrangement, which
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
did?
Yeah.
It's amazing.
And Do You Want to Dance? I slowed that down from the original. And yeah.
It's great stuff.
Yeah.
1983, you did the concert at Blenheim Palace in England.
Yeah.
Which was also televised.
That was wild. Because, that was, by that time I had met Gary Keefe, and he put that one together with a couple of very big geniuses, Andrew, Danny Batesh and Andrew, what is it, Mark? Miller. Danny Batesh and Andrew Miller, and they would produce my concerts when we went to England, which is another story. That exploded, holy mackerel, when England exploded. By the time we got to Blenheim Palace, it had been, must have been 8 years that I had visited England. And first time I got there was in 1976, 7, something like that. And they booked us at the Palladium. And I thought, nobody knows me here. What are you doing? We sold the place out for they extended the run. Again, those were the years where I just didn't believe what was happening to me. And I didn't understand what was happening to me. But if it was big in the States, it was twice as big in England, which was crazy. I still had my Brooklyn accent. I just didn't understand what was happening. But they were great. The British audience, and when the British audiences like you, they like you forever. It doesn't matter whether you have a hit record, it doesn't matter whether you look terrible, they stick with you. And they have with me all these years. We go there and they're still out there for me. They're just fantastic. Anyway, it had been a couple of years that I kept coming back and forth to England, and we always did well. So Gary booked the backyard of Blenheim Palace. It's a sheep meadow that was huge. It was huge, and they put up a huge stage, and I had a big orchestra. And I thought, well, it would be, who would come to this thing? It was hours away from London. I kept saying, are you sure what you're doing is right? Anyway, they all said, yeah, somebody will show up. So they did. They did. Gary made it into an afternoon carnival with the curtain down on the stage. So people would come all afternoon. They'd have picnics, and there were clowns and food, and it was a great afternoon for everybody. And when the sun went down, the curtain went up, and I did my show, and they were wonderful, just wonderful crowd. But what I didn't realize was the size of the crowd, because it was much bigger than I thought. I did the whole show, and the television cameras lit up most of the audience, but what I didn't see was the rest of them. And I did a song that I end the show with called One Voice. And in England, they lit their little lighters or candles or something. And when I hit one, the whole place lit their lighters. And it was twice as many people as I had thought were there. And you see me go, whoa. It was like a city of little flames. That was wild. That was a wild experience that there would be that many people coming to the concert at Blenheim Palace. Oof.
Why do you think British audiences connected with you so much?
I don't know, you have to ask them. I haven't figured any of this out yet.
Well, it's working, so keep doing what you're
Right.
doing.
Right.
Then 1984, you performed the national anthem at the Super Bowl that year. What was that experience like?
Well, they're very tall. These football players. I'm not into sports, as you can tell. But I had to stand between the two lines, and they're very tall. And they're like huge. They're huge. And nobody told me that there was going to be these planes going over on the last note. Nobody told me that. And I hit the last note and really peed in my pants because they are loud. It was thrilling. It was thrilling to do it. But I had to lip sync it, and that was kind of a scandal because I would love to do it live, but because of the television sound at that point, they wouldn't let me. They told me I had to lip sync it. So I went into the studio and did a version of it. And I think Diana Ross had lip synced her national anthem the year before, but nobody knew that. But the word got out that I was doing it, and it was like bad press all over the place. And I kept trying to say that wasn't my choice, but that's what I remember of that. But it was thrilling, just thrilling to do that.
Mm-hmm. And then in 1985, the TV movie of Copacabana came out.
Yeah.
So how did that go from song to becoming a TV movie?
Well, Copa has been, it started off as being a casino show in Atlantic City. It was a 3-minute record, a casino show. It was a breath mint, a suppository. It's been everything. And so why not be a television movie? It's the only song I could think of other than Rhinestone Cowboy that actually has a story to it. And Bruce and Jack wrote a brilliant lyric, and it's so difficult to do. It's a full story in 3 verses and 3 repeated choruses. I don't know how they did it. You get to know Tony, Lola, and Rico. You get to know who loves who, and you get to know who shot who, or you get to know somebody did. And it's a repeated chorus. That means they can't tell the story in those choruses. They have to tell the story in 3 verses, and they do. And so, that's an amazing, amazing trick that they did. And I wrote a very catchy melody and Ronnie and I made a great record. So I called Dick one afternoon and I said, how about making a movie?
This is Dick Clark.
Yeah, Dick Clark. How about making a movie of Copacabana? I don't know why I did that. I just picked up the phone and thought I'd make a perfect Tony. My ego must have been out of control. But I would make a perfect Tony. I was the right age and all. I never made a movie, and maybe I just wanted to scare myself again. And he said, I think you're right. And he went to, I forget what network it was, ABC again?
I think it was ABC. Mm-hmm.
Could be ABC. And they said yes. And it was the first original musical movie on television since the 50s when they did Cinderella for Rodgers and Hammerstein. But this was a book musical. Rodgers and Hammerstein, I don't think, was a book musical. This was an original book musical movie. And we were very proud of what we had done. And, I wasn't Dustin Hoffman, but I wasn't embarrassing.
Had you still been taking acting lessons that whole time?
Yeah. But I'd never done anything like that. I'd never, acted on a stage, and certainly not in a film. And, it was the first couple of scenes were terrifying. But Annette O'Toole was wonderful. She was great to work with, and Waris Hussein was our director. But he was great. But they don't. What I learned is they don't really pay attention to the actor. They really paying attention to the lights, the sound, the stuff going overhead, and so you got to really know what you're doing, because when they say cut, that's unless you beg to do it again, they're not going to do it again. And with this one, doing a musical in 1 month was crazy. It was crazy to try to do that. You can barely get a regular drama movie done in 1 month, but to do a musical, with all the elements that go into making a musical film. I don't know how he did it. And Bob Goodwin was producer, and you know they were wonderful, and they did it, and it wasn't bad really. It got decent ratings, and I don't know. You probably you look on YouTube or something, but it's not bad.
And James Lipton wrote the script.
James Lipton, yep.
And it has a lot of your own personal background is kind of in
He
Tony's
put all
character.
that in, yeah, he did. It was great of him to do that. He did. He put grandma and mama and all that stuff, accordion, right? Yeah, he put all that stuff in, and my missing father, he put that into. Yeah, it's great. And you know, so when I did those scenes, you know, they were deeper than they would be if it was just a regular script. Yeah, he did that. James was great.
And you wrote 10 new songs for the...
We did, yeah. We wrote those. They were all original just for that. You know, Sweet Heaven, I'm in Love Again, which was wonderful for Tony to sing at the Copacabana. It was a wonderful moment, and, you know, I forget the rest of them. Man Wanted for Annette O'Toole to do. It was great. And now it goes on the road constantly as a two-act musical, because after The Suppository and Breath Mint, it became a two-act, a legit two-act musical on the West End in England. And it toured there, and it stayed on the West End for a couple of years. And then now it tours over England, and it tours in the United States too. And it's got a wonderful score. And you see, you know, I look on YouTube, you can find Coppa doing it from the B'nai B'rith in, you know, in the middle of the country to, you know, really wonderful, wonderful productions. So Coppa is, you know, well, it hasn't died yet.
And then 1988, your fifth TV special, Barry Manilow, Big Fun on Swing Street.
That was my favorite one.
Why is that your favorite?
Well, first of all, I loved that album, Swing Street. And, you know, we came up with a great idea to call a street Swing Street. And the guests I had were just magnificent. Jerry Mulligan, baritone sax player, Carmen McRae, please, one of the great jazz singers of all time. And Phyllis Hyman, and it was great. And do you remember who the set decorator was? He's a big name.
I think Charles Listenby won it for...
He won, yes.
He won art directing?
Yeah, art directing. That was, he created Swing Street, like, holy moly. It was really an amazing, amazing production. And I loved that. I think that's my favorite one of all the specials.
Because he built an actual street with lampposts and the cafes and the Savoys there.
Absolutely. It's an amazing. You don't see that too much. I don't think you can. You like Carol Burnett said on the Golden Globes, you'll never see her kind of show again, and I don't think you'll ever see this kind of thing on TV anymore.
You also did 2 A&E specials in the Live by Request format. One, Barry Manilow in '96, and a Barry Manilow Christmas in 2003.
I loved it.
Why? What did you love about those?
I just loved it. I wish they were doing that series again. You know, I loved doing it with the audience. I love talking to the audiences, and I don't know. There was something great about both of them. I was very secure on both shows. The band knew the arrangements for both shows. I was in great voice on both of them. You know, and we really didn't know what they were going to request. It wasn't, you know, it wasn't that they could request any old album cut, because we couldn't have done that. But there was a list of about 40 songs that I think the producers gave to these the people who called in requests, and we knew all of those. So we never knew which one they were going to request. But once they requested it, my band could play it, I could sing it. So I just loved it.
How much rehearsal goes into something like that
None.
for 40 songs?
None.
No?
None, because in my band, you know, going on the road together so many years, they know every song. That they can't be stumped. You can't stump my band. Anybody who, you know, any one of those songs we can play right now, you know, so it's great.
How long have you been together with your band and your backup singers?
Long time. A lot of guys have been with me over 20 years. Yeah.
It's amazing. Well, in addition to the Christmas special, you perform a very Barry Christmas concert for many years now. What do you like about performing the Christmas music?
Oh, But you know, I like the Christmas season. It's about giving. I like that. You know, people stop hollering. And I do like those old 1940s Christmas songs. You know, the current ones, you know, maybe some of them are really good, but it's nothing like the old Christmas songs on the radio, you know, chestnuts roasting. I mean, it's Christmas when you hear that. So I, you know, let it snow, let it snow, let it snow. Just, you know, it's great song writing, and it's got great feelings to them, and great emotion to all of them. So that's what I'm all about. So I do like that season. And I love going on the road with this Christmas show. I don't like going on the road, but with this Christmas show, I had a wonderful time. Yeah.
Had you watched or grown up watching any of those classic Christmas specials with Bing Crosby or
Oh,
Andy Williams? Or
sure. How can you not?
Yeah.
They were wonderful. They were just great.
Fantastic. All right, so 2006, you win your second Emmy for Manilow Music and Passion, which was a PBS special. Do you recall how PBS got involved with that concert? I had read that they
No.
that it was for the pledge drive. Does that
Was
sound
what?
right? That it was for their pledge drive that they were going to
I
air something?
I don't remember.
Okay.
Is that the one that Ken Ehrlich did? Is that the one Ken Ehrlich did at the Kodak?
No.
No.
What was that guy's name?
That wasn't-
Which one did I win the Emmy
It's
for?
for the Hilton show when we got to the Hilton. It's the Las Vegas show.
Yeah, it's
Music and
celebrating
Passion.
your 100th performance in Vegas.
It was the Las
That's
Vegas
the
show.
second
Hilton.
Emmy?
David Mallet, yeah,
David Mallet.
directed it.
Okay, I'm sorry.
No, no problem.
I mean, I remember the Hilton show, but I don't remember I don't think there's anything different about the TV version of it than what we did every night. So I don't think there's any big story about that one.
Okay. It was your second Emmy, though.
Yeah, I shouldn't have won that one.
Why do you
Honestly.
say that?
Well, because, you know, Jon Stewart, every night, they put me in a category that, you know, was filled with guys that did brilliant work every night. Jon Stewart and Colbert, and I forget who the other ones were. And I only did one night of music, and I won it. And so, you know, I don't think these guys will ever forgive me. But what I remember best about winning that was right before my category came up, Dick Clark came out after the stroke and did a speech. People stood up, of course. And then I came out and did Bandstand Boogie. And then I walked over to him at the podium and he broke down. And I held him and they went to commercial. And I walked him off the stage into the wings and he was still like a wreck. And they came back from commercial and they went right to my category. And I was still with Dick and I won. And Gary is yelling, "Get out there, go!" So I went out there and I made a fool of myself like everybody does, thanking everybody. And but I always feel guilty about that. And then Stephen Colbert invited me on his show and I came on with my Emmy and walked on and, "Hi, Stephen." Made him feel worse.
Well, he did start kind of this mock feud with you about it,
Yeah.
and you guys signed a peace treaty on his show.
He's great. Great.
And you're now back in Vegas again at the Westgate, which used to be the Hilton. Is that correct?
Used to be the Hilton, so it's the same stage. They're renovating the whole place, and they haven't gone as far as doing anything to the showroom, which I'm happy about because I love that room. It's big, but it's intimate, and I love it when it's like that. And we've got a new show there. It's beautiful, very current, and what was great about it is because I really wanted to get off the road because I was on the road for too many years, too many weeks, too many months away from home. And this dropped in my lap. Good, weekends. We can do weekends. I can keep my band. I can keep my crew working, and I don't have to go on the road all the time. And it was the perfect answer to that problem. So I don't go on the road. I do one-nighters now and again, but we do the weekends, and everybody's happy. And I really enjoy it.
So we want to talk a little bit too about some of your other TV appearances on popular programs.
Sure.
You've done a bunch of those over the years. So let's start with Murphy Brown, which you were on in 1993.
Yeah, it was. You know, I always get nervous when they ask me. I know they're going to put me down. You know, so you know, is this gonna hurt? Because I saw it coming, because they had written a storyline where she doesn't like my music, but the little infant does, and she likes a lot of Motown. I think that was the thing. She liked Motown. She didn't like my ballads. And but every time she played my song, the infant who was crying all the time would go to sleep. So there was a lot of jokes at my expense, which is fine, because if it's funny, it's fine. Anyway, they wrote a real nice thing for me, and she says, because they give her a gift of a whole bunch of my albums, and it's funny, she doesn't want it. And the last one is, oh, Barry Manilow live. That's great. And I say, it could be worse. You could have had to pay for it. And that's my entrance or something. Anyway, we get to know each other, and then she's got the little kid there, and I go to the piano and I sing "I Am Your Child," a beautiful little song, and they put together a montage of what it would be to have the little infant grow up and go to college and get married and all. So of course, by the end of the song, she's crying and I'm crying, and so it turned out to be a great guest spot, even though it wasn't at my expense at the end. So.
When you do something like that, is you just go in for one day kind of a thing, or
Yeah.
is there rehearsals that
Yeah.
you're attending?
Yeah, it was one day. Yeah, well, they're used to doing this kind of thing, so you just gotta kind of slide in there.
Mm-hmm. Ally McBeal.
Yeah, well, David E. Kelly came up with the cockamamie, this crazy thing where she's hearing my music and me all over the place. I wound up singing one of the songs in the toilet. Wasn't that true? I was in the okay, are you ready, Mr. Manilow? And I was on the toilet, it wasn't, and they opened it up and I sang Even Now or something like that, because she's in the bathroom. Anyway, it was great. She can only see me, but nobody else can. But that was great, I loved it.
Yeah, you're one of her hallucinations.
Right, that's exactly it. That's where I got this director's chair. They gave it to me as a present. In the back it says Ally McBeal, and here it says my name. They gave it to me. It's one of my treasures.
We'll turn it around at the end so everybody can see that. You also did an episode of Will and Grace, which was called Manilow.
Yeah, well, that's where that name came from.
Oh, really?
A lot of people, they use that, and that's where the nickname came from. My fans hated that, but I think they've gotten to like it over the years, but that's where it came from. And I think I do make an appearance at the very end
Right
of the show.
at the end, yeah.
Yeah.
Will is
Yeah.
waiting for tickets for your show.
Right.
How do you feel about the term Manilow?
Well, I didn't like it in the beginning, but when people meet me and they say I'm a Manilow, they're so sincere that I've gotten to like it. So I don't mind it, but I wasn't crazy about it in the beginning, but now I don't mind it.
You weren't on, but your voice is on Family Guy.
Yeah, that was wild. Yeah. Again, they start off with putting me down, and then they admit that they like my music. So it was fine. And I thought it was a great spot.
It's a great spot where you pull Quagmire up on stage.
Right, and I sing old Quagmire instead
Yeah.
of Mandy. That's a funny idea.
You got to go into a recording booth and
Yeah,
record
absolutely, yeah.
Quagmire.
Absolutely.
Fantastic. And then you mentioned earlier you were on several episodes of American Idol. You performed and were a guest judge.
Yeah.
So what was that process like, being a judge?
Well, I asked them if I could have an extra week with the contestants that I was going to judge, so I could do their arrangements.
Oh, wow.
Right. So they gave me an extra week, and I met them all, and I did their arrangements. They would bring in, just like at callback, they would bring their music. What are they going to sing? And they were doing my stuff. So they would pick Weekend in New England, or they would pick any one of the other ones. It's a Miracle, or and I would work with them at the piano and tailor the arrangement to them, and which they didn't have time to do any other time. And these kids were great. They were very grateful. And then the next week when they came on, I was one of the judges, and they did great. And Simon was, oh my God, what did you do to them? but it was great because I could, I think I was able to show these kids what they need to do without me. They need to find out why they're singing the song they're singing and what they want to do in the song, what kind of version of it that would make sense for them to do. And I think it worked. I think they were better on that week than they were just singing What the World Needs Now Is Love. This time when they sing What the World Needs Now Is Love, I think they're going to be thinking about that lyric.
Do you enjoy working in that kind of mentoring capacity?
I do. I do.
And you've actually talked to a lot of high schools over the years too. When you toured, you would go to local high schools or local colleges.
I wish I could do more of it. Yeah, I've been through the mill. I've been down the road. I've been there, and I wish I could share it more. I would if people asked me.
It's wonderful. What do you? There's kind of a proliferation of these American Idol type shows, these music competition shows. What's your take on kind of that in pop culture right now?
They're all different, and I think there are a lot of very talented contestants. I really am not a television watcher, but now and again I bump into, what's the one with the chairs, The Voice?
The Voice. Mm-hmm.
They're pretty good. These singers are pretty good. And the arranger, I don't know who it is, he does a fine job for them. I think they've figured out how to do it. In the beginning, American Idol was kind of shaky, but even American Idol sounds pretty good. I think they're taking care of their singers, and that makes me feel good. And I think it's great. I think it's great as long as they know what they're doing with the music. I think it's great. I mean, people love these shows, and they love these singers, and some of them, but they don't become pop stars, do they? They did in the beginning of American Idol, but they don't do that anymore. Well, music has changed so much. Who knows what's a hit anymore? Nobody knows nothing. Nobody knows nothing. Really, that's what I've learned. Nobody knows anything.
How has the industry changed since you first started out?
Well, it changes. The style of music changes all the time. They were able to put up with me for 10 years instead of 5 years. That's what a record career usually lasts, but they were able to put up with me for 10, which was nuts. And then it just flipped over to Lionel Richie and Michael Jackson, and they stopped playing the kind of music that I was making. Well, that happens to everybody, and I lucked into the Clive, who allowed me to make any album that I wanted. So I just came up with a big band album and showed to him and said, and so I had a great home base, and I was able to do that. But when the music styles change, well, there's a lot of people don't know where to go, what to do. And now it's changed to the point that nobody knows nothing. Nobody knows what's on the radio anymore, Do you listen to the pop radio?
Sometimes.
Sometimes? Mm-hmm. Isn't it all angry rap?
There's some of that.
Yeah. Are you angry?
I'm not angry.
You don't sound angry. Anyway, it's just, it gets me kind of upset. I'm looking for the melody. I'm always looking for the melody, and I don't hear a melody on pop radio. Maybe now and again. But I'm always looking for the melody, and it used to be on the pop radio, but it's not very much of it anymore. So maybe it'll come back.
Let's talk a little bit about your process for coming up with a melody. I mean, I know you came from this jingle background, which might have been helpful in creating melodies, but are you sitting at a piano? Do you like to work in the afternoon or the morning? Like, what's your process for writing?
Yes.
All of the above?
All of it. I'm just, I can't tell you when it's going to hit. I like to write on demand. I don't like to write. A lot of songwriters just write every day. I've tried that, and then I don't know what to do with the song. And so I've got a whole batch of wonderful songs that nobody will hear because there wasn't a project for them. So I stopped doing that. I don't want them to just go away. So I learned that from jingles too. I like doing it on demand. I know what they need. I'll give them to them. But the songwriting process, it's all about what the company needs, or what for a record. I know exactly what I need to do for the next record, or for somebody else's record. But I'm not one of those songwriters that needs to write every day.
Do you usually have a lyric first, or do you have a melody first?
It's
or-
always different. Sometimes I have a melody. Most of the time, I put the melody to a lyric. My collaborators and I talk about what the song is going to be about. That's the hard part. The bloodletting is in the idea of the song. Afterward, after we know what the song is going to be about, then that's the fun. Then those wonderful lyricists send me their lyrics, and I put a melody to it, and that always comes very fast.
So when you're writing out orchestrations, what is that like for you? Are you strewn
Well,
about on a piano?
Well, I don't do that anymore, but I give them, I give the orchestrators the layout of what I want. So I sit at the piano and I start and I sing and I change the key, or I put a riff in the middle of it and I get a big ending, and I put a little string line here, a little horn answer there, and I give the orchestrator all that information, and then we go to the studio and he's written it out for a big orchestra, and so most of the time it's wonderful, and then I put my vocals on. So that's usually the process for these albums.
And how has technology impacted your process?
Well, I had to, and I did it on purpose. I knew that if I didn't learn how to make music with my computer, I would be left behind. And many musicians were. And my technician friends taught me how to use Pro Tools and all this stuff that you hear about all day long when all the young people are doing. I am great at this, and I love it. Whenever I create with my computer. I've got a great studio down the block, and right now I got 2 technicians up in my studio because I'm finishing up an album. And but I do it all by myself, everything, even my vocals. I don't need an engineer. I do the whole thing all alone. And then at the very end, if I need an orchestra, I go into LA, and then we put the orchestra on it. But up until then, I do it alone, and it's a fantastic way to live.
Is the
And I can
sound
be in
different?
my T-shirt, and my jeans, and I don't have to look good.
Does it sound much different to you than having a full orchestra, or is it?
Oh no, what I do doesn't need it. I get up to needing the orchestra, and everything else is done, and then I go to LA and finish it by putting drums, bass, orchestra, everything. But the hard work is done all by myself, putting the whole thing together, and then somebody else does it, the orchestrator or the producer.
So you've talked about becoming more comfortable as a performer over the years. Are there any behind-the-scenes rituals you do every time you perform, like any warm-ups that you do, anything like that?
I don't. I really don't. I don't.
Was there a certain time or a certain performance where you just noticed, I'm not that nervous anymore, I'm confident, I got this?
It's an interesting question. I wouldn't say I'm nervous. I'm usually unsure of what's going to happen out there, because as the years have gone on, the audiences have changed for me. A lot of them are still, gung-ho. And then there's another part of the audience that's, I've heard of this guy. What does he do? And that's when I'm unsure back there, but I usually think to myself, I'm going to get these motherfuckers. And that, forget about the language, that will propel me out on that stage. And that's fun. That's fun.
So you like a challenge?
Yeah, and that's great for a performer. Or to or to be angry, and I don't like that. But you need something to propel you out on that stage. At least I do. And moments like that are great, because then I've got it's not going to be an easy ride for me, and because I have to prove myself to strangers, and that's happening more and more because. How many years have I been doing this? It's amazing that I look so fabulous.
Absolutely. How involved have you been in the business side of things over the years, managing rights and royalties and that kind of thing?
Oh, no. That's way over my head. But when I started off, I was an idiot, and I didn't know anything. Like I told you, I used my first big check as a bookmark. That's where I started, and I got myself a business manager who I didn't know, and I trusted. You can get this story from every young artist. Coming from nowhere, I honestly had never learned how to do any of this, and of course, I went broke after the big hits. I was practically bankrupt, and I had Mandy, I Write the Songs, Can't Smile Without You, all of this one's for you, Weekend in New England. And when Gary and I were looking for the money it would take to buy a house, there was nothing. I had $11,000 in the bank. And it wasn't because I was signing with crooks. They just didn't know what to do with money that was coming in like that. I don't know what. I think you'll hear this from everybody who starts from nothing and gets all this money at once. And thank goodness I met Gary, and he takes care of everything. And at that point, I didn't pay attention to the money. Right after that, I started asking questions. Questions that I didn't know anything about. I would never have asked, and that's what happened when I didn't ask those questions. They went haywire. Well, I ask a lot of questions these days. I'm not good at it, but at least I know what's happening, and I trust the right people.
And over the years, too, you've been involved with some music licensing legislation on Capitol Hill. You've lobbied for and against various things. Talk a little bit about your work.
The first time I went there is when they went from analog to digital. And digital sounded so fantastic coming from the radio that you didn't need to buy an album. You could just tape it right off the radio, and songwriters went crazy. Because in order to hear it done right, we used to, buy a wonderful CD or something. But when digital hit and they were playing it on the radio, well, then you could just tape it right from the radio, and it sounds perfect. You don't need to buy another tape of your song. So I went with BMI to lobby for an extra penny or something like that for songwriters.
Well, now we just have a few summing up questions. Is there anyone who you would say has been a mentor in your career?
Clive.
Clive?
Yeah, Clive. I wouldn't have the career I have without Clive. We had the greatest fights, and the greatest successes, greatest celebrations. And it's been quite a ride with the two of us. So would I call him a mentor? Maybe he's a mentor. Certainly he's been very important to my life.
So we here at the Academy, we started in '96 doing these interviews. We've been doing them over 20 years now. What do you think is the value of preserving these kind of behind-the-scenes stories that we're talking about today?
Well, I don't think there's any other place you'll ever hear what I just did or what Kevin Carlisle did for you. It's going to go into the air. If you don't do this, all the work that I've done and all of your interviewees have done, you won't know it. Maybe you'll know a little bit of it, but you'll never get it all together in 2 hours. And I haven't seen the other interviews, but they must be fascinating. These men and women have done everything that we've loved on television. And now, I don't know if you can get it. Sometimes I don't know how I get it, but I've seen these things on my computer, and they're riveting. They're all about TV shows and other things that were very important to my life. And I always wondered how they got where they got. And these people tell you about them. And without you guys doing this, it's going to go into the air, and we'll never know how I don't know, Sid Caesar's show, how that happened, or how the Carol Burnett shows happened. All the, the music and the comedy and, Bob Mackey and stuff like that. You'll never know without you guys interviewing these people. I do think this is an important one. That's why I said yes so quickly. My story is not important, but those guys that invented these wonderful TV shows, these groundbreaking, Gary Smith and Dwight Hemming, and these groundbreaking hours and films, those are really important.
Your story is as well, Barry.
Thanks.
Is there a dream project that you'd still love to do?
There's a Broadway musical that my collaborator Bruce and I have been trying to get up, and we love it so much. And maybe we finally found a good producer, but that's the only one that really I wish we could do that.
And you actually did win a Tony for being on Broadway as
Yeah,
well,
only
correct?
for being alive, not for writing anything. No, this show is called Harmony, and it's been up periodically. We get some awards, and it sells out and all. We just can't seem to get it to New York, but maybe soon.
What's the best advice anybody ever gave you about working in the industry?
That's a terrible question.
We can skip it.
Yeah, I just would love to give you the greatest answer, but I need to think about it. I don't want to be a wise ass.
Playboy advisor.
3/4 right?
That's a good tip.
What was a Playboy advisor?
Oh, but that's not the answer to that question. 3/4 right.
That's a good answer. Well, what advice would you give to either an aspiring songwriter or performer?
Well, to a young musician or songwriter, I would always say learn to read music to a young singer, because you'll always work if you can read music. If you're a musician in a band, or if you're a singer, you'll always work, because people that do jingles or studio singers, they just hand you a sheet of music and you have to sing it. Or if you're going to be in a band, they'll hand you their sheet of music. You got to play it. You got to play it. If you're just hoping that you're talented enough to just thrill everybody, well, maybe you are. But if you want to make a career out of it, learn to read music, and then you'll always work.
What would you say is your proudest career achievement?
Say it again.
Your proudest career achievement?
I don't know. I can't think of one. Can't think of one. The only thing I can think of is that I think I've remained the same guy that started off. That's the proudest thing, because I meet so many of these people, and it's changed them. Success has changed them. You can't help it. It's going to change you. I think I made it. I made it through the rain. I made it through that hurricane of success with my feet on the ground. I think I'm the most proud of that.
Do you have any career regrets?
Regrets?
Mm-hmm.
I wish I hadn't gone on the road as much as I had, but once I had to go back from being bankrupt, I had to do it. It was the only way. And so, I went on the road for months and years at a time to get back on my feet. But I wish I hadn't had to do that. That's my only regret.
We've skipped around a lot of your projects today. Is there anything we haven't covered that you'd like to talk about?
I don't think so. I've got interesting panel chatter here and there, but this has been more serious and more autobiographical than my panel chatter is. So, I hope I gave you what you wanted.
It's fantastic. We just have one more question left that we ask everybody, which is, how would you like to be remembered?
As a guy that made you feel.
That you definitely have. Thank you so much for your time today, Barry.
You too.